New music.
And RCs. Brought to you by ServerPress, Maker's Desktop Server. They make local WordPress development easy. Check them out over at serverpress.com. And Project Panorama is a visual project management platform for WordPress that keeps clients happy and eliminates the headaches that cost you time and money when managing projects. Check them out at projectpanorama.com. First, over on Patreon, go to patreon.com/WPWaterCooler. We'd really appreciate if you did that. I'm Jason Tucker, director and helper. You can find me at Jason Tucker on Twitter.
I'm Steve Zehngut. I'm the founder of Zeek Interactive, and I run the OC WordPress Meetup.
She Say Read. She's not here today. Check her out. Say Read Media on all the things.
It's your boy Jason Cosper, aka Fat Mullenweg. What up?
Leave us a review as a podcast on wherever it is that you're maybe listening to this podcast. Go to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. We'd really appreciate that. And lastly, if you want to come and hang out with us in Discord, go to wpwatercore.com/Discord. So, Steve, the reason why the song's different is
I like the new music. It's cool.
Show.
Oh wow! You know, and I should really pay attention.
I love it. I love it.
Steve breezed in about 2 minutes before we started recording, so it's fine that he didn't recognize that it was a new show. I hold no fault with him on that.
There's something about golf or something, right? He was just like complaining about golf again. Is that what it was? I can't remember what.
Yeah,
birdies and holes in ones, and I don't know. It's been a minute. I don't know.
I think he was talking about he lost his clippers. He wanted to cut his hair and he lost his clippers.
Yeah. All right, enough. Yes, my team is out of the playoffs. Okay, moving on. This is Dev Branch, right?
This is Dev Branch.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the developer side of it. So who are they going to pick up next year in order to be able to make sure that they win?
Just because Alex Vasquez might listen to this show, hopefully Damian Lillard. So, and then we're just going to leave it at that.
Oh goodness! So yeah, today we're talking about the importance of testing your code in the betas and the RCs. Cosper, you were saying during our pre-show that RC1 just came out, and we're having to look at that, right?
Yeah, our RC1 release candidate 1 of WordPress 5.8 just dropped, and really when we start getting into the release candidate area, you start getting those nags from the WordPress repository if you have something in the repo, either the plugin or the theme repo, to test against the new version of WordPress. I think that this is something that's a good thing and something that needs to be done. But I think as developers, even if you don't have a plugin in the repo, when they hit the release candidate, it's a good time to start thinking about testing your code to make sure that, when you decide to finally, update your client sites or whatever, that things will go smoothly.
Yeah. And I don't know how many times we've ran into issues where, a new plugin or an existing plugin, you could tell that it just wasn't tested and things aren't working correctly and things start breaking and new features come out and they haven't even been like battle tested yet. They've just been kind of sitting around for a little while and they finally release it. There's some stuff in this one that could definitely have those types of issues.
Are there any JavaScript changes in this one? Because that was the real headache with the last couple of releases was all the JavaScript headaches. And those, granted, those were more plugin issues, but it just seemed to be a whole system issue where there was a lot of JavaScript stuff, and it was all dashboard side, right? It wasn't really client side stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. we don't have say here to have.
That's what that long
to-
pause
to-
was about. That's for for us to edit and say later.
Yeah,
It would have been longer.
Absolutely.
We should have just waited a little bit longer because it wasn't long. Yeah, so I loaded up the release candidate page here, so you can take a look at it, and just some of the some of the new things that are in it and what's to be expected from it, and that sort of stuff. There's a decent amount of stuff, especially when it comes to blocks and even editing post templates. We're going to go through this stuff when it actually gets released, but the idea of having to go through and make sure you're testing everything. How do you think things should people should be approaching this when they are going through and wanting to be able to test against this release candidate or even the next piece that comes out? How should they approach that, Cosper?
When I have done testing on my plugins and stuff in the repo, I really, it depends on what your code does. In the case of, at one point, I had a 4-strong passwords plugin in the WordPress plugin repository, and making sure, basically, kind of like Steve said, that there weren't JavaScript changes that ended up breaking the library that I used. Making sure that the library was actually still up to date. Those are things that I tried to regularly do outside of WordPress releases, but it's always a good time to go through and double check that sort of thing. Make sure that the functionality of your plugin still does what it says it does, that people aren't running into. And that's fine for something where it's like you just force a user into using a strong password. That's a pretty simple, straightforward plugin. But when you have something with a lot of moving parts, like EDD, like WooCommerce, like even Gravity Forms, there's a lot more stuff to check. And I almost wish that we had a developer of a larger plugin like that to talk about that. Steve, what do you guys do when a new version of WordPress drops?
Just throw it on production and hope for the best. I'm joking. I'm joking.
Oh my gosh.
We actually have a policy where if it's a major version of WordPress like 5.8, we actually won't deploy it on our production sites, right? So we on all of our servers, let's take Nexus for instance. We've told on our hosting plan, basically we said do not update core for us. We control that update, right? And so, like I said, as a policy, we're not gonna, when 5.8 comes out, we're not gonna update it on any of our production sites. We're gonna wait for 5.8.1 or even 5.8.2 just to give us some extra time for testing. But I always like to wait for that .1 just so that all the bugs are kind of worked out before we go onto our production sites. But what we do is we'll for major versions, we'll test it locally or in some sort of a sandbox, with a clone of the production site to just make sure everything's working correctly. That's what we do here. We don't. We also have a lot of automated testing tools that will let us know when something goes wrong. So when these things do break, we're typically alerted right away. When something goes wrong, so that we can go in and address it. I was going to say, this is sort of off topic a little bit based on what you asked, but I'm noticing that a lot more plugins and themes are making use of autoloaders. And so an autoloader has the ability to sort of circumvent WordPress's natural, filtering system, or the order in which it activates plugin technology and where things are supposed to be activated. And so sometimes if an autoloader isn't built correctly, or if it's not looking for a particular edge case or some setup in your site, that it by itself can cause a bug because it's loading something too soon in the stack for WordPress to be able to handle. and I notice those things because we use autoloaders as well. You know, our standard system, we make pretty good use of the MU plugins directory. So we have our own folder that we're putting inside of MU plugins for all of our custom code, and we use an autoloader there. And so we notice our stuff pretty quickly if something goes wrong because of the way our autoloader system is set up. You know, we're going to get the bugs kind of quicker than most. But I'm noticing autoloaders are being added into a lot of third-party technology recently.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say I used to maybe it's age, maybe it's experience, perhaps it's both. But back in the day, just even a few years ago, I was one of the wild few who decided that, you know what, WordPress.com runs on basically trunk. They are effectively using, and this, at least they were, as of like 5 or 10 years ago, they were running on WordPress trunk to test stuff out. That, you know what, screw it, my site's going to do it too. And most of my production sites, despite the fact that they say not to do it, were running trunk. And occasionally there were bugs, but it was actually fairly solid. It worked fairly well. But again, a lot of those sites were just little stupid things. You know, if my blog went offline for an afternoon, oh no, people can't read a 3-year-old post on a thing that I wrote or something. You know, it's just, it doesn't necessarily matter.
Yeah. Let me just clarify, you know, while we hold up those core updates and run those manually on our own, we're actually not really worried about core. Right. I'm not worried about what core is going to do by itself. Right. If we were just running core and like 2020 theme, right, I would let it go ahead and update. It's the plugins that I'm worried about. Right. It's all the third party technology that don't get updated at the same rate that I'm worried. That's where I worry about the conflicts. Right. And so that's why we don't update core or we update core manually.
Yeah. When I was working at WP Engine just a few years ago, I'm not sure if they still do this or not, but there always tends to be that WordPress release around December. So it's right in the middle of the holiday season. And if you are running a site where you're selling something, the last thing you want to do is run a major update in the middle of, so they would hold, and I know it was something that Matt would get a little bent out of shape over, is that WP Engine would hold the release, that major like Christmas time, holiday season release, until the next year. And in a lot of cases, they would wait, just like you, Steve, until the point release, the point 1 was out. And say like, okay, we're not going to start pushing this as an update to our customers. And I think one of the reasons Matt got mad is because it's like, you guys are a managed host. Like, you should be able to manage this for your customers. And it's like, this is how we are managing it.
That's right. You're managing expectations.
Yeah. We're managing. You know, I wonder if Matt would be interested in just going to WP Engine and sitting with all of the support staff and just answer all of those messages that come.
I was going to say, let him work the support desk for a day. Yeah,
absolutely.
You know, there's a couple things in the page that you had up earlier, Jason, that I'm a little, or I want to call out. I'm a little concerned about. Right. Now it is an edge case, but they're dropping support for IE11 in this release. Right. Not that I'm advocating that anybody use IE11, but there are large corporations that have IT departments that don't update their browsers for many different reasons, right? And so that by itself could cause some headaches in situations where people have a sort of a controlled environment that they don't have any choice, right? Where IT's basically said, this is what we're using. Again, I think that's an edge case, right? I'm not worried about support for IE11, but I always get concerned when they're dropping support for something like that.
Yeah, but one that goes along with that is the adding support for WebP.
Yep, I was going to call that out as well.
Like we're all installing plugins to support WebP, or we've all come up with our own like special sauce to kind of make that thing work. And to when you go and add support into Core for that sort of thing, you got to either make sure that that your plugin is smart enough to realize that Core has added that, so now you're having to go through, or maybe the functionality within Core isn't as robust as what the functionality is for that third-party plugin.
Yeah, and the other thing I'm concerned about when they start adding support for a new image type is now they've messed with all the media functions, right? That are inside of Core. And so, without digging in, what this means to me, adding support for WebP means that they've adjusted the functions around WP attachments, right? So it's any of those attachment calls, which is the best practices for building something into your theme or plugin, right? But it says to me that those are now all those calls are now vulnerable.
Well, they're getting rid of IE 11 there. So looking on Can I Use, you see right over here on the left here that it's still red. So good riddance. Browser released in what, 2013?
But you're yeah, I'm all for getting rid of any versions of IE or any Microsoft browser, period, right? I think that you should just put reds next to all the Edge ones as well. But people still use these things. So but you were looking, I think that page you were looking at was specifically is, can IE11 support WebP?
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Just it's like you're looking at it and you're going, well, obviously
you could put anything in there and IE11 is going to be red, right? you could literally put HTML in there and IE11 is going to be red.
Right.
But you look at the Can I Use and the big thing for me that's kind of wild about that is that Safari has support for it, but it has partial support.
Mm-hmm.
So not all partial support. And I know that the world is more than just Apple, despite the fact that I'm Steve Jobs fanboy number one over here. I will I will say that there are a lot of people who browse the web on their iPhones, and unless they are on the latest and greatest version of iOS, they're going to run into a problem when WebP images, especially stuff that uses kind of these more fun edge cases, crop up. They're going to be like, oh, the site looks broken.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm making the assumption that that they're building in those proper fallbacks, right, inside of the image tags. I'll have to look at it because I haven't looked at the code. So those fallbacks will be there. All right. But anytime you start messing with those tags, you're vulnerable to bugs.
And that also assumes, if you're not building things in Gutenberg, if you're still using a theme, that the person implementing the theme is putting the WebP images in the right way in the image tags. So
yep. I want to know whether you're going to drop support for the classic editor.
Ooh.
Maybe we'll discuss that next week. That's a topic all by itself. The classic editor will be the next water cooler.
Yeah. I've slowly but surely have been adding more blocks to my sites now, and have started working on rebuilding the water cooler and Gutenberg as well. So,
but I know this is off topic. I know this is off topic, but there's a whole group of plugins that rely on Classic Editor, right? That need Classic Editor just for their front end interface, that are not Gutenberg compatible.
Yeah, and those all will no longer be relevant anymore. So we'll have even less plugins that are in the repo that are going to be updated.
Yep.
Interesting. Yeah, I think if you're someone who's making blocks, obviously that's going to be the a place that you really need to test. Version 10.7 of the Gutenberg plugin will be with this as well, so you want to make sure you're going through and testing that stuff too. So yeah, there is quite a bit that's involved in some of this stuff here.
Yeah. Cosper, would you do any load testing with a release candidate like this?
Yeah, I would. Mainly if there is a large amount of changes to how the JavaScript is implemented. Things of that nature. A core site, just basic core with some plain test content, not any additional plugins or anything else. Tests basically the same, like between 5.7, whatever the point release is right now, and 5.8. There's not a huge difference there. What I would do is I would maybe consider using something like Codeception to actually test a version of of a site. So basically I would upgrade a site to the release candidate of 5.8. I would write some tests in Codeception, which if you haven't played with it or used it is, I mean, I have seen some very non-technical users write decent Codeception tests. It's basically like check to make sure that this element on the page is loading, and then check and make sure that you can click on this link. When you click on this link, make sure that you can add this item to cart, and then you go down. Basically, it's really simple to use, and it can be a good part of your workflow. But I have a few WooCommerce like test installs that have 10,000 products, and I would write some Codeception tests that basically go through and say like, okay, hit the site, click this, add this to cart, make sure the checkout flow works, and see if there's an issue. And I do, and I have run those on newer versions of WordPress, basically, like as things get ready to ship.
Smart.
I'll also give a shout out for Ghost Inspector, which is similar, right? It's more of a GUI form of what you're doing in Codeception, which is again, you're just saying, is this thing loading? Does this thing do this on this page? Very similar process. We use Ghost Inspector as part of our deployment stack.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have also I've been using K6 for a lot of my load testing stuff, but I've been getting into flood.io, and they have they handle like Selenium and jQuery and stuff like that, but they have their own thing called Element that an element test looks very similar to Codeception. So if you're comfortable writing tests in Codeception, writing a load test in Flood or in Element for Flood is very easy. And actually, I think their pricing, they have a pretty decent free tier, so you can throw just a simple amount of load at. So in those cases where Steve said, like, do you load test a new release? Like, sure, I would do it with this. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's like 500 hours for free.
Yeah. Which, like I said, very generous.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. BuddyWorks, by the way, has a free tier as well. I don't know if that's recent. I had to look at their pricing for somebody this morning, but it's buddy.works, and this is what we use for our basically our automated deployment, our continuous integration, right? It's a tool chaining system, and so you can set up something. You can use Codeception or Ghost Inspector as part of your stack or as part of your tool chain if you want to automate some of these processes. And they have a free tier if you look under pricing, Jason. I think it's and like I said, like you just said, their free tier is actually pretty generous as well. I think it's like 120 executions for free.
5 projects, 120.
Yeah, 120 pipeline runs per month, which is a lot.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, they got to hook you in. They hook you in, and you get used to it. And then they're like,
absolutely,
hey man, we need that $75 or $200 a month from you. So,
well worth it. We give a lot of money every month to these guys at BuddyWorks. So big shout out there.
I will say we have a few minutes left, and we had a long silence before Steve started talking about BuddyWorks. So I'll just go ahead and give a second, a little shout out. The Make WordPress hosting group in the core WordPress Slack has something where they have set up a way to run basically the same CI tests, the continuous integration tests that run on WordPress core when a new patch gets released, when new code gets added and everything else. And Jason, if you want to click on the link I dropped in the chat, you can actually see that they have. It's going to take a second to pull up. Okay, so these host test results, they show like basically, okay, the last 25 tests, all of these hosts have submitted and done tests. Scroll down a little bit more, Jason. So you can see each release, or each bit of code that gets added gets tested against all of these different hosts.
Wow.
So if you are an end user and are worried about the new version of WordPress running on your host, don't worry. A lot of hosts out there are testing to make sure that WordPress will, in fact, run on your host.
That's cool.
It looks like one particular host keeps having some failures that happen on that too. Interesting.
I don't want to mention any names, but it's on the screen.
right.
But but it's the only one that's failed on all 3 of the tests.
Yeah. Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, you can go back through the history and see like all of the different, like if you go down to the bottom, there's pages upon pages of these tests. Yeah, like 2,115 pages of these tests, and that goes back to, I think, Shredder, when he was working over at DreamHost, was the first one to set this up.
Very cool.
And then SiteGround started picking up a few, and like kind of as you go back through, and more hosts as time has gone on have added their results, and it only helps the project.
Right. Oh, that's neat. I remember you talking about this with me offline, but super interesting to see that how those tests are done and what the results are of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Huh.
We have a cron job that runs once an hour, and we'll just submit our test results. We occasionally have some cron problems that I need to, walk over and jab things with a sharp stick. But,
is that actually how you fix things over there? Or?
I mean, I'm remote, so I have to ask somebody to go and jab something with a sharp stick. But I mean, It's just a simple Slack message. It's not a big deal.
I was actually hoping you could like jab Chris Lemma with a sharp stick for me, and like
Flash,
if you had
sharp stick.
if you
and then
had
just
if you actually
fix it.
had a sharp stick there.
I don't. I mean, I could just maybe try to like Facebook message Melissa and ask her to walk into the office and jab
Yeah,
him. But
Yeah, I can do that. I was just maybe
Right.
hoping you had like a some sort of like an end around, like
no.
Damn it, Cosper,
And
you're no good to me.
We're done. We're definitely gonna have to do some more of this. This host testing topic might be something we should jump into at some point. If you're game, Cosper, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. I like seeing how some of this stuff's done, and it'd be neat to kind of explore it if you're interested. So anyhow, thank you all for hanging out with us. We really appreciate it. And you have a good rest of your day. Here's our outro. Subscribe to us. Go over to wpwatercooler.com/subscribe. You can subscribe to us as an audio podcast on your favorite audio podcast player, as well as on YouTube. Talk to y'all later. You have a good one. Bye-bye.